Tip number 7. All words and numbers are counted. I'll repeat that. All words and numbers are counted in the answers for the listening section of the IELTS. What does this mean? If I have an answer and my answer is a holiday, that's 2 words. It would not be considered to just be 1 word. So the tip that I gave earlier, where I said that please read the instructions clearly and ensure that you interpret the instructions clearly for when you are asked to write an exact number of words. In writing down the exact number of words, you must know that every mark that you make on your answer sheet will be counted as part of the number of words for that particular question. So, as much as possible, it is important that you take your time to practice questions that require you to write an exact number of words and ensure that you stick to the instruction. If you've been asked to write 2 words, make sure that you write just 2 words only. If you've been asked to write no more than 3 words and/or a number, ensure that your answer does not exceed this specified instruction. The next tip is this. People ask questions. Which is more preferable for me to write, words or letters? What do they mean? In the IELTS, you are given a multiple choice question, and you have a question that says, in which year was the city of China founded? Or which year was the city of China discovered? This is a hypothetical question, and you have options A, B, C, D, and A, B, C, and D. Option A says 1975, option B says 2007, option C says 1867, and option D says 1345. What are you writing? Are you writing the options, the alphabets for the correct options, which is A, B, C, or D, or you're writing the numbers that are attached to those alphabets? Please, as much as possible, this is also the time where you are expected to do what? Read the instruction. Every question type has a specific instruction attached to it. Oftentimes, or most common, is write down the correct option, either A or B or C or D. As much as possible, I have seen test takers fail woefully just because they did not heed the instruction in either they should write down the letters or the words. Please, as much as possible, do not fall into this trap. It is a very smooth and easy way to fail the IELTS if you do not interpret the instruction or stick to what the instruction wants you to do. Some specific question types, which questions like matching headings or matching sentence endings, will tell you to write down the correct Roman numeral. So for example, those type of questions could have questions 35 to 40, and you are expected to match questions 35 to 40 with options that are given to you, options from Roman numeral I to Roman numeral IX, which is number 9. And you are expected to write down the correct Roman numeral, which is I to IX. The instruction states this carefully. If you go ahead and you do not write that, and you write what is specified if Roman numeral I has the sentence Lanre likes football, and you go ahead and you write Lanre likes football in the exam, you would have failed that question woefully, because the instruction says that you should do what? Write the correct corresponding numeral, not the sentence or the phrase that the numeral carries. This is a very easy way to miss out on the IELTS, and I see a lot of non-native users of the language or test takers miss out on their desired scores for the IELTS because they make these flimsy excuses of an error. Please do not be part of them. Tip number 9. Do not try to understand everything in the listening tape. It is not possible. 30 minutes of listening tape for 40 questions. Chances are that for those 40 questions, you do not need information that exceeds 15 to 10 minutes, which means that the remaining 20 minutes is what? White noise. White noise that you need to tune out so that you can focus on the specific information that you need to answer the question. So, while focus is an integral aspect of the listening section of the IELTS, you do also need to be selective about what you're focusing on. I've seen a lot of situations where test takers start the listening test, and when you're listening, they try to jot down, or they try to take notes, jot down everything that they can hear. This is the wrong approach or the wrong strategy to use. And why is this? Because if you're listening to a tape and you endeavor to take active notes and jot down everything that you can hear, you do not know if everything that you've jotted is relevant or necessary to answer the questions. So, what should you do? Let the questions be your guide. For the listening section of the IELTS, you will be asked to look at the questions or read the questions first before you listen to the tape. This avails you the opportunity to predict or to focus on the specific areas of the tape that you need to answer the questions. Please do not focus on every single word or utterance that you can hear in the listening tape, but only on the specific areas that the questions direct you to. You cannot try to understand everything that will be said in the 30 minutes tape. It is impossible, it is difficult, and you are setting yourself up for failure if you do this. The next tip is this. Use the time given to you to check the questions before the tape starts, effectively and productively. This is a tip that a lot of people disregard. The listening section of the IELTS requires a lot of focus, like I said before, and this puts an inordinate amount of fear in a lot of test takers. What happens is this: before the listening tape starts, their minds are focused strictly on what they want to hear, and they are prepping their mind, they're prepping themselves to start to hear the start of the tape, disregarding the question paper that is lying right in front of them. And even when the narrator or when the person in the tape says, please take some time to look at questions 1 to 5 before you hear the tape, they do not listen to this. They disregard this. Do not be a part of this. What you should do in the time allotted to checking out the questions is check the questions. And you're not just checking the questions only, you're doing it effectively. And how do you do that? Read each question. Identify a keyword in each question. It is this keyword that you're putting at the back of your mind so that when the tape starts, once you hear the keyword, it signifies to you that your answer is close by or is nearby. And all you do is that you open your mind and pick out that relevant information that is attached or that follows immediately the keyword. Reading the questions allows you to predict what type of information you're listening out for. If I read a set of questions 1 to 5, and if I see that question 1 to 5 is a note or is a table that requires me to complete the details for a particular person, for a speaker who is calling a train station to find out about the dispatch times for different trains. And questions 1 to 5 is getting down their biodata, name, address, age, and the cost of the train tickets. Reading the question first gives me an opportunity to see that these are the key details that I need to put some focus on when the tape starts. So when the tape starts and the tape goes by saying, oh, hello, my name is Lanre, and this is this the Strathclyde train station? I'm calling to make inquiries about a possible ride to Dover in the next 3 days. And he says, oh, welcome, Mr. Lanre. Where are you calling from? Now, because I've looked at the tape, because I've looked at the questions before, when I hear questions like when I hear words like when, where, how much, I know that they are going to be mentioning details that are relevant to the questions that I'm answering, and I am much more prepared and better set to capture or to grasp those details than someone who hasn't looked at the questions, who has no idea of what he should be listening out for, and is just listening to the tape on a blank slate. Next tip, always keep your eye on the next question. This simply means that you shouldn't focus too much on one question as the answers come very quickly. For example, 3 answers can come in the rapid succession, so you need to have your answers, you need to have the succeeding questions in view. What do I mean? So questions 1 to 5 requires that I fill out the biodata of the caller to a train station. And section 1 says name, question 1, name, question 2, time, question 3, address, question 4, the cost. And all this information from question number 1 to question number 4 can be embedded in just 2 sentences. Now imagine if my focus is just on question 1, waiting to listen to question 1, and when I hear question 1, I'm relaxing and taking like 3 other seconds to go to question 2. I would miss out on the flow of information. The flow is quite fast, so you need to be prepared for the next set of questions. So do not focus on one question to the detriment of the succeeding ones. Rather, I would advise that you take those questions in chunks. So when the listening tape gives you the instruction to look at questions 6 to 11 before you start listening, it means that 6 to 11 is a full chunk that I'm taking all together, and I am listening out for the information needed to fill those questions at a stretch and not just individually. Next tip, make notes. I mentioned this earlier about active note taking, and I touched on the fact that a lot of non-native speakers feel the compulsion to write down everything that they can hear from the tape. This is not how to make notes for the listening section of the IELTS. What you're doing, the notes that you're taking are guided by what? By the questions that you have seen. So when I have checked the questions and I have an idea of what I'm listening out for, I am taking notes specifically of those details when I hear them in the listening tape. Please, the speed of the answers means that you do not have time to write long sentences. So what do? You should write in shorthand, or you should write in abbreviations, or you should make notes in a format that is short and easy for you to understand and decipher when you're transferring your answers to the main answer sheet. So for example, if I'm listening to a conversation between 2 students and Lanre says, my name is Lanre and I'm studying business management, what I would write as my note will be L equal to BUSMGT. What does that mean? That's just shorthand for Lanre equal to business management. When I am transferring my answers, it is easy for me to interpret what I have written and write out the full format instead of me trying to write Lanre studying business management. The seconds it will take me to put down that sentence will ensure that I will miss the next set of questions that I need to answer. So please, when you're making notes, try as much as possible, use abbreviations, use shorthand, and write down short phrases instead of long sentences. Tip 13, voice changes. You should be prepared to take note of voice changes as they usually indicate a non-verbal cue in communication. A higher or lower pitch than normal indicates something is wrong or something has changed in the conversation. I'll give you a very classic example to illustrate this. There's a conversation between speaker A and speaker B. For the purposes of this example, we'll say speaker A is Aaron and speaker B is Lanre. Speaker A says, speaker A, Aaron, Lanre, I'd like to visit you this weekend for a time out. Speaker B says, okay, I stay in Ibadan. Ibadan is a rural sleepy town in the southwestern part of Nigeria. And speaker A says, okay, what can we do for fun in Ibadan? And speaker B says, well, we could visit the ShopRite mall and we could also go to the cinema in Ibadan. And speaker A says, ShopRite? Cinema? In Ibadan? Okay. And the question is this. When speaker B replies, what emotion does speaker B's reply or response convey to you? When speaker B says, ShopRite? Cinema? In Ibadan? The pitch of his voice goes higher. That high pitch indicates something, and what it indicates is that speaker B is expressing what? disbelief. This is a classic example of how voice changes can affect or contribute to nonverbal cues in communication.